Hello, everyone. How's it going? As introduced, my name is Patrick Kettner. I come here from sunny Seattle, Washington, over in the States, and I'm working on Microsoft Edge there. I'm a technical program manager. What that means is I get to work with a lot of new and upcoming technologies and help the browser team implement them based off of feedback I get from web developers, from open source folks, from enterprises to understand how we can make the web platform as useful and powerful as a tool as possible. And the past year to 2.5 years of my life has been spent working with what I'm here today to talk about, PWAs. It's something that is fundamentally represents a shift in how we think and reason about web technologies. And just in case anyone's unfamiliar, PWA stands for a Progressive Web Application. And if that sounds like a really soft, mushy term, it's because it is. PWA isn't really a thing so much as a philosophy. There's a bunch of different things that can fit into the category of a PWA. The main idea, the main abstraction that they all kind of share in common is that there's a bunch of subsets of applications, or at least parts of an application, that previously were relegated purely to native interactions. Something had to be done in a Windows application, in an iOS or Android app. It just simply wasn't possible on the web platform. What we as browser engineers have been trying to do is to get a list of all those things and make it as short as possible. We're trying to take all those applications, all those abstractions that were previously impossible on the web and make them into web applications. We do this through a bunch of new techniques. It's stuff like WebAssembly, like you heard before from Colin. It's in addition to that, adding a whole bunch of new APIs to the browser platform so that you can make more compelling websites and web applications. Some of the most exciting or popular ones that have resulted most recently are things like push notifications. So you can actually have notifications sent down to your browser, whether or not the browser itself is open, let alone your own website. You can actually completely close it down, send down a message, have your users get that information near instantaneously, just like you would expect from a native application. Perhaps most importantly is the offline ability of a lot of these applications. Rather than have this white screen that you normally get when you load a website, you can have content near instantaneously. That content is saved and cached locally so that as soon as you boot your application, your PWA, you're actually seeing pixels. Now, that might seem kind of trivial in a world where we have LTE and cable, really fast internet at home and at work. But keep in mind, really fast applications that work offline make really fast internet connections even faster. Every byte that you don't have to download over the wire, you're not having to travel hundreds or thousands of miles to a data center just to round trip and go back to paint a single pixel. You can have that locally. It means everything just gets faster. It means less network congestion. It just means the users download less and get to work faster. And then there's all kinds of subsets and more interesting, nuanced APIs, like the background sync API is a really fun one. It allows for you to do certain types of network interactions, things like file uploads, API calls, anything you would normally do over the network today. But it allows you to register a network call, and then it lets the user completely close down the browser, and the browser will continue to upload that information to your server until it gets a response. If the network interaction is interrupted, say they turn off their device or the Wi-Fi drops or they go in the tube or anything else, it's fine. The browser will continue to upload that information as soon as you get back, as soon as the user gets back online. You don't have to worry about blocking your user with modals or pop-ups to make sure that certain mission-critical APIs are done before they close down your application. You can register a thing and just know that it's going to complete as soon as the network is physically capable. Now, those are just a few of a couple of really quick things around PWAs, but I think they can kind of represent the spirit that a whole bunch of stuff that was impossible just a couple of years ago is now absolutely possible. It's impossible across all major browsers. All of these features are things that have been implemented in basically every major browser on every major platform. You can do these things on Edge on your desktop, on your iPhone, on your Android devices, on Chrome. Just about anywhere these browsers run, you can have these sorts of modern dev experiences. And that's really, really exciting because it means that we've been investing, tens of thousands of developer hours per company of all of these companies, not to mention, countless others from people from like IBM or other industry supporters that have been pouring their engineering resources into these platforms. And as a result, we've been seeing huge investments. I'm sure a lot of you saw the Gartner huge results in our investments. I'm sure a number of you have saw the Gartner report that came out a few weeks ago saying that in the next 2 years, more than 20% of existing native applications were going to be dropped entirely in favor for PWAs. Within the same amount of time, more than 50% of client-facing interactions and apps are going to actually be built using PWA technologies. Now again, a PWA isn't necessarily one definitive thing, it's just the web technologies you've been hearing about today. You can leverage these things to create experiences in a much more rapid and fast-paced developer cycle. The lead analyst for that report, Jason Wong, actually said the reason why they're being so aggressive on their predictions as far as what markets are going to move, is because it's simply faster to implement web technologies than it is most native technologies. You heard earlier that anything that you're going to choose is going to be completely wrong within 3 years. Well, it's a lot easier to redo all your stuff on web technologies than it is on web forms or ancient Windows technologies. This has really been proven in a number of the client-based implementations of progressive web apps that have come out. When you're looking at some popular client-facing sites, we have stuff like mobiletwitter.com. This is a PWA that was launched in the middle of last year, and they've actually seen more than a 70% increase in engagement compared with their other platforms, and a 20% decrease in bounce rates, all while maintaining a 97% reduction in file size. It's a massive, massive amount of feature set in a microscopic amount of code, and you can do so with the performance of a native application. They've actually begun to remove their native apps from a number of their platforms, specifically targeting to replace them with their PWA. They have a really, really wonderful performance, and it's crazy the amount of rich feature sets that are possible today. Starbucks is another great example. A local developer firm to both Seattle and London, Formidable Labs, recreated the user menu interactions, the user app interactions. So if you log in, your gift cards, your store receipts, things like that, as a PWA, and they did so in 1% of the original file size, all while maintaining complete feature parity. There's nothing their native apps can do that their PWA is unable to do. They're also doing some really fascinating experiments with web crypto. So they actually have the entirety of their native interactions and all of their user information completely encrypted on the client. So if it's sent over a network that isn't trusted, it doesn't matter. It's completely separate from their HTTPS encryption. It's actually a user secret directly on the device. Some really fascinating stuff, and it's exciting to see where it's going from here. Uber and Lyft, the ride-sharing applications, have also created some PWA versions of their applications. And they've done so to great success. Once again, greatly reduced file size and greatly increased in the number of actual active users. The reason being, if you can load an application that's smaller, it gets it faster, more people are likely to actually engage. It's really just the same type of user interactions and experiences we've been having for a really long time with web technologies. Bringing it closer to my home, we have Microsoft Teams. It's a collaborative chat application that has existed for a couple of years within Microsoft, and we've begun making it more publicly available. And the idea here is just one-to-many or many-to-many chat application where you're able to interact with people, and they have stuff like video calls, collaborative code editing, all sorts of different feature sets. Last year, they actually began pivoting to base most of the bottom line of their platform on top of PWAs. You'll notice, the eagle-eyed among you might notice there's this line right here that actually touts their desktop experience for a more feature-filled experience. And that is true. This screenshot was taken on Windows 10, and if you install their PWA as a native application, you actually get increased experiences. See, the PWA works across browser. It works in Safari, it works in Chrome, Firefox, Edge, obviously. But when you install it on platforms, you actually gain access to a lot of native APIs. Windows is being one of the more aggressive examples of this. When you install a PWA in Windows 10, you'll actually get the entirety of the Windows 10 RT API subset. So that means you can interact with things like Cortana, your user's Outlook, their calendar, anything that you could do from your native WinRT applications, basically any Windows API that exists, you can actually programmatically interact with from your PWA in JavaScript in a progressive way. So you don't have to worry about splitting your code path. You just check see if the feature exists, and then you use it, you interact with it. Now, this might sound kind of familiar. I know more than 5 years ago, I had stuff on my CV about how I can make native applications using web technologies. This is not a new idea. We had stuff like PhoneGap or Cordova, and even more recently, we have Electron. And they're phenomenal projects. They're really, really impressive pieces of technology. They were very similar in idea. They would wrap a website in a native bundle and then ship it down to your client. I'm sure a number of you use Electron apps all the time. And as exciting as they are as a piece of technology, as time goes on, we've started to notice a number of issues with them. Well, first of all, When you bundle up an entire web runtime with your application, you go from having a couple of megabyte sized website to hundreds of megabytes because you're including your own instance of usually the Chrome engine. There's nothing wrong with the Chrome engine, it's wonderful, it's fast. But when you have 5 or 6 versions of Electron apps running simultaneously, you need a really beefy machine in order to not feel how painful that can become. Not only that, there's been a huge recent interest in the security around PWAs, specifically in comparison to Electron. You see, Electron by itself is they use the Chrome engine, but they actually kind of fork it and maintain an active fork of it. They add features and then release it. Unfortunately, because of backwards compatibility, that means over time, they fall behind. If you were to download Electron today, the most cutting-edge, bleeding version off of GitHub, I did so this morning, you'll be getting Chrome 61. Chrome 67 is going to be released soon, and they have about 6-week difference between each one. So you're getting more than a half a year of features, security updates, patches, all those things that are missing. You just simply can't get them in the Electron app because they're working to update. And that's assuming you have the most up-to-date version of Electron. If you're using an Electron app, you have the ability to pin the version, and that's what most people end up doing. And so when my team actually did some research into the top 100 Electron apps that exist, using window install numbers, we actually found that more than half of them had multiple critical vulnerabilities, meaning that you can take over the entire user account or the entire machine simply by having some remote code. So if you have an Electron app that accesses the internet, you're vulnerable. You have the opportunity to completely lose control of your machine. It's dangerous to use them in a lot of cases. And this is nothing against the Electron folks, the Chromium folks. They're all incredibly smart engineers and security engineers. But when you look at what's practically possible, it is not capable. It's not possible for folks to actually keep Electron more up to date than Chrome in the same way that you can't keep it more up to date with Chrome. You can't get those security patches faster than the people that are actually writing them. It's, progressive web apps are something that allow you to ship much less code in a much faster way. And it's something that has a huge amount of investment from across the board, all major browser vendors. There's a whole bunch of features that are still coming up through PWAs. I only was able to cover just a few of them in the short amount of time I have here. I could go on for hours, but there's all kinds of new technologies coming up with them. Basically anything that you can imagine that you want from within a native application, there's multiple conversations going on between browser vendors to see how we can get that in a native capability. Things like geofencing, offline device sync, all kinds of, even more and more advanced technologies are coming. We just want your feedback. One thing, especially from industries that are particularly siloed, like the financial industry, it's incredibly valuable to get feedback as far as how is web technology failing you specifically. Browsers are starved for actual reasonable feedback from people that aren't just, nutty sending emails or something. If you can give us real feedback on what you want out of the web platform, we can build it for you. The reason why service workers, the thing that builds offline extensible experiences, the backbone of PWAs, that exists purely because of the team at the Financial Times. They told us how the current offline solutions didn't work for them, and browsers built it. We gave you what they wanted because they asked for it. Give us that feedback, and we would be love to do it. Sorry, I forgot to mention this really fun one about Electron too. This is the latest CVE about Electron, where every version of Electron that is currently shipped has this node integration bypass. Node integration is the ability to run node modules, anything from NPM and Node.js, inside of your Electron app. This is currently unpatched in Electron, and so basically, if you have connection to your internet in your Electron app, remote attackers have the ability, theoretically, to turn on node integration, download any node module, and run any node module against your machine as that current user. It's unpatched. There's not even a pull request yet. It's not that Electron's dangerous. It's that it can be dangerous. And so why not remove yourself from that by using more native technologies, or native to the browser, rather, like progressive web apps. So, this is my information. I would love to chat more about this. I can go on for hours. Unfortunately, I had a very short amount of time. Please feel free to reach out to me. My username is Patrick Kettner on every single platform. You can also email me directly if you have matters you want to speak about, and I'll be around if you want to chat. Thanks a lot.